Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. You're welcome to another episode of the State of the Ummah, a program where we look at some of the biggest issues that affects the Ummah, that affects the manpower of the Ummah, that affects the financial status of the Ummah, that affects the spiritual status of the Ummah. And today we're looking at issues around the human capital of the Ummah. This is the most important part. The religion has come to build the best of man. If you even look at the heritage, the biggest legacies of the Prophet ﷺ, it was more about the people that he left than the physical infrastructure and buildings that he built. It is more about the people. Today, as an ummah, we are looking at the status of our youth, our women, and even the men. We are looking at the impact that this big issue of drug abuse is having on the ummah. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been discussing the town hall meeting that was had by the Abuja Muslim Forum on this issue of drug abuse. Today, we are recapping and we are having the final episode of this menace of drug abuse. The question is, with all that has been said, is it sinking? Are we confident that going forward, we'll be able to tackle some of the biggest issues that confront us? What are even the factors that are pushing or driving these issues of drug abuse? We are having in the studio with us today one of the panelists at that session. He is Dr. Itopa Yahya Garba. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been looking at various issues, taking shots from the discussions that was had by the Abuja Muslim Forum at the town hall meeting on this same issue. Today, we want to recap and summarize some of the biggest issues, some of the advice that we have gotten from those sessions. Inshallah, after the break, we'll be bringing in, you'll be meeting our guests, and together we'll be summarizing these things to make sure we have the tips and tricks and the best of tools that the Ummah can use to, if we cannot stop it completely, but to mitigate it to a manageable level. After the break, we'll meet our guests and move on from there. Welcome back. With me in the studio is Dr. Itopa Yahya Garba. We were together at the town hall meeting, and he will be with us in the studio today to recap some of those issues, some of the advice and tips that were given at the town hall meeting. Dr. Yahya Garba is a public health practitioner and is a consultant of the West African College of Physicians. And a member of the international, is a certified international addiction practitioner. Doctor, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you very much for having me here again.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. I want to start with this. We've discussed it. I know we've talked about it a lot, that this issue of drug abuse is widespread. It's a danger and it's a serious issue.
Yes.
From the information you have access to, how widespread is this issue of drug abuse?
Wow. Well, the truth of the matter is that in recent times, the issue of drug abuse or drug dependence, as we like to say, is actually quite widespread. It may be a bit difficult to put a figure to it because it varies from one locality to the other and amongst the different groups. Okay. Initially, there used to be a disparity between how drug use, the prevalence between males and females, but it seems as if the female folks are actually catching up fast, very, very fast. And it also depends again on which specific drug we are talking about. However, we want to look at it, it's actually a very prevalent menace in the society today. There is virtually no household where you will not probably come across somebody who is either recovering from drug abuse or actively into it. That is as far back as as far as I've come to observe in my own practice. So it's much of a problem. But then the real figures in terms of prevalence, how many persons per 100,000 population may be a little bit difficult. It all depends on who is doing the research and what the person is looking at. You know, because we've had from figures between 4% to 20% to 60% or even higher, depending on, again, like I said, which substance are you looking at? You know, so but then the bottom line is that it's very prevalent.
It's an issue worthy
It's
that the
an
nation
issue that is worthy of the outcry that we are getting in the society today.
Okay, so I want to look at somebody gets addicted.
Yes.
One is, can an addict actually be reversed back to normal life? Is there a chance? What's the chance of success?
Wow, it's a big question, but you never say never. In addiction practice, what we say is that someone who was an addict before, who was dependent on a substance, can recover, but then they only remain in recovery as long as they do not revert to the issue of drug use. The reason being that when a person's use of substance gets to the level of addiction, it already creates a dysfunction in the brain. In fact, it's not just about the function of the brain, even the structure of the brain is also affected, you know? So it's actually a medically known, let me use the word pathology. Pathology means disruption or disease, let me put it that way, okay? So when it gets to that level, the person may recover, may heal to some extent.
But some damage has been done.
Yes, already. The damage has been done. So it takes an inordinate amount of time for full healing to occur. However, at any point in time, there's still that risk of a lapse or a relapse happening. So if you find someone who has been an addict but has not used any drug for like 10 years, we still consider that person as being in recovery, because we know that there is that potential that somehow one of the initial drivers or life events might just push him to slip back. So we talk of recovery and not, or being in recovery and not like fully recovered or healed. No. We avoid we don't want to use that word now, because we've seen people who have done fantastically well, and before you know it, they just slip back.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. That's good to know. At least there is a chance to reverse the progression of the addiction.
Yes. And the longer they stay away,
the more recovered.
Exactly.
Wow.
The less the likelihood of going back into it.
Yes. So, before, at the end of the day, what we want to do on today's show is to break the program, to the discussion into those that are addicted, what do we do, and those that are not.
Okay.
But before I get into that, I want to know what a substance abuse actually implies. I mean, I take a lot of soft drink, a particular soft drink, and they say, no, you take this thing too much. Am I getting addicted to that soft drink, that mineral, so to say? I take a lot of I like suya a lot with the yaji. In fact, every evening as I drive home, I branch to buy every evening. So that appetite for something, at which point is it tending towards addiction?
Okay, good, very good. You see, there are characteristics behavior that defines dependence or addiction, as the case may be. In fact, we used to characterize what we call drug abuse or misuse on one hand, and drug dependence or addiction on the other hand. So where misuse is like the introduction. I mean, when someone is misusing a drug, he's not addicted yet, but he's exhibiting certain behavior pattern that shows that this is drug abuse. However, it's a step further in the wrong direction when the person now becomes addicted. Now, so what are the things you notice? First, you start realizing that the person, there's a certain number of characteristics you observe over some time too, because there's a time criteria. I mean, just taking a sniff of cannabis, for example, or cigarette, or a shot of alcohol does not make the person an abuser or dependent. But then there are some drugs, if you try it just once, you just might get hooked immediately with just one try. Cocaine especially, it has that characteristics for some persons. You take it once and then you're already an addict. So it's better don't just go near it at all. Now, what are these characteristics you find out that defines abuse or dependence. You find that the person uses this substance, for example, in what we call physically hazardous situations. You know, you are so used to, you want to drive, you're going on a trip, but you need to take a shot of alcohol, you know, just to steady
be
your
able
heart,
to
exactly,
function
to
properly.
function properly. And of course, it doesn't exactly improve your function because it's going to impair your judgment while you're on the trip. Or you are beginning to have problems, social problems, maybe your wife complains, your husband complains, you know, as a result of this behavior, okay? Or you're unable to meet up with your responsibilities because you spend so much money and time taking drugs, you realize that you can't pay your children's school fees, okay? You can't pay your bills, your light bills and things like that. Those are already defining a behavioral pattern you can see. Or so the person continues using this drug even when there are evidence that, look, this person is having health problems. Like a smoker, for example, already diagnosed of having maybe cancer of the lungs, or or chronic bronchitis, and yet he's still there smoking. He can't help it. Okay. Now, when you start, then of course you keep on repeatedly getting into trouble with the law. You know, today you are arrested because you are in possession of cannabis. The next time you are arrested because you got into fight after being drunk. Repeated brushes with the law as a result of drug use. You know, so those kind of behavioral pattern, when it is becoming established in a person, you know that this person is abusing something.
Yeah.
Now again, there is this issue of tolerance. You know, where initially you take just let's say 1 wrap of cannabis and you're okay. After some time, 1 wrap doesn't get you the high any longer.
Gauge.
So you step up and you keep on stepping up because the body now adjusts to accommodate more. So the person develops tolerance. You find out that of course it keeps on expending more time and resources to procure it. You know, so that's what defines. Those are the things that defines the issue of exactly that this person becoming an addict.
Yeah, that's going from misuse to
into
abuse and
addiction.
dependence and addiction.
Exactly. Misuse and abuse are actually the same thing.
Okay.
Then dependence and addiction are the same thing. So we just interuse those 2 words.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now let's get into the fact that, okay, we pray we don't get ourselves or our loved ones addicted.
Yes.
But if somebody gets addicted, what will be your smartest, or what will be your advice? Yes. Somebody calls you, Malang, doctor, this is the situation. What is likely to be the set of advice, and what's the first aid?
Yes. You see, in the issue of addiction, even though the person picks up the behavior voluntarily most of the time, or at times maybe by peer pressure, recovering from it is usually not an individual, it's not something the person does on his own, okay? A lot of persons may be in a state where they don't even know they have a problem. You know, we call it that scenario where they're in the pre-contemplative state. You know, he's not even thinking about stopping yet because he has no idea that he has a problem. You know, so it may take family members, friends to say, look, don't you think your drug use is becoming a problem to you? You know, so what I'm trying to say here now is this. If the person comes to the realization that, look, I need help, then that's a positive step. Because then he may now be able to subject himself to the persons or the therapists that are willing to assist. So you need that person to voluntarily accept before your treatment can be effective. Now we have scenarios where you may have to do something immediately. For example, somebody overdosed, on a drug, where his life is under threat. Then such a person needs to be evacuated to a hospital environment, detoxified, where we remove stabilize his vital signs and make sure he excretes the toxic substance enough for him to become conscious again and self-aware. Then we now start at the beginning to start seeing how we can engage him to come into therapy. Therapy can be of 2 types. It may be on outpatient basis. You may need the person to be an inpatient client. It all depends on the severity and what substance the person is using. So an addict really needs to be engaged and first realize that, look, I need help. And he also must agree that, look, at this point, I need help. So because by the time you discharge from the hospital, it doesn't stop there. Because the person, the same environment where the same friends that supply him or that they go out together are still there. So how do you train this person to stop, if the thoughts or the craving comes? Once in a while, he sees paraphernalias or environmental cues that shows him that we bring the memory. The memory is not erased, So what do you do?
Can't
when
you
have
erase
this urge?
memory?
Well,
So that I mean, selectively.
Okay.
Can't you now like go into this and delete some files
if we could do that, it would have been very fantastic. We just come, we plug you in and
just select
go out.
click,
Exactly.
delete.
So until we are able to, to link man with machine fully, integrate them, then we can go to those
All right,
files and
thank
remove
you
them.
very much, doctor. That will be interesting. That is telling us that it's not a lost case. If we have a case, I mean, he mentioned it could be like we just find somebody is overdosed. So that's like an emergency case. Some detoxification needs to happen. If it is not that case, we start seeing some signs and the person has not accepted that he's in trouble or is heading for trouble, then that's the management of that differs. But if we're in a situation where the person already accepts that there is a need to take action, then the whole treatment or the whole procedure can be had. That's, for me, good news. I see a situation where we can move forward from there. We'll take a break now. After the break, we'll get a little bit into how to prevent ourselves. I mean, we don't want to even be dealing with how to recover from it. We want to talk a little bit on how do we even ensure that we don't get into it after the break. Alhamdulillah, we have had a good session and we are still having in the studio with us Dr. Itopa. He's a consultant, psychiatric, is an addiction prevention,
Professional.
an addiction professional. So addiction could come in multiple forms. You could get addicted to different things, substances, behavior. There are multiple things that could be addicted to, one could get addicted to, and you need to take steps back from it. All these are fields of study that some people have studied, and the Ummah needs help and needs guidance on how to take people from being addicted out of it. Dr. Itopa is still with us in the studio. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Doctor, we want to go into safeguards. We are concerned. We've talked a little bit about someone that is addicted.
Yes.
How do we prevent and safeguard those that are not yet addicted? Are there things that we should avoid? How do we safeguard those that are not?
Okay. I think of importance in this respect is the issue of education. Yes, a lot of enlightenment is necessary, and it should start very early, when the child is picking interest, having friends, even as early as nurseries, primary school, because a lot of formative behaviors take place around that time. That's when the person starts, watching what the people do. They start having what looks like quasi role models. And of course, we also need to safeguard what our children watch on TV. That's why you find out a lot of programs these days, they are rated parental guidance and that, so that if you watch programs with your children, you're able to tell them that, look, even though these people are doing this, it's not a good thing to do. They pick a lot of good behavior and a lot of bad behavior from what they watch. So parental guidance is actually of key. Now, as they grow up and start becoming adolescents, then again, the behavioral pattern changes. There's a lot of self-discovery during adolescence, and there is also that pattern of behavior where where kids want to explore. Now, you as a parent or as a guardian needs to have a very high index of suspicion. We have gone past the time when you think that, well, I'm doing good, then my children would naturally take after me. No. Today, with the information explosion, accessibility to the internet, people tend to follow all sorts of role models outside the family circle, okay? Because their exposure is quite high to all sorts of things now. But then you also need to be aware of those early things you need to know. When you start noticing some behavioral changes, your child is very respectful, is beginning to become rude. that shows that is a pointer that something is happening. Okay, that rudeness may be out of being bold from having taken something. Your child comes back home and he's looking all the eyes, all red, bloodshot eyes. You know that's a problem. He's oversleeping and he's not ill. You know that's a problem. Or he doesn't sleep and wakes up, and he stays awake all through the night. You should be aware of that. Then again, maybe he goes into the toilet and spends hours there, and in ordinary time that you don't expect, maybe he's hiding and taking something, and especially those that smoke, they're expecting the wind to blow it off before it comes out. So when you start noticing significant changes, in person's behavior, he starts keeping late nights, he starts having friends he doesn't invite to the house, you must suspect that there's something happening here. Okay? So those are the kind of things you need to really look out to be able to nib it in the bud. Because when they are still experimenting, if you catch them then of course you can remedy the situation. Again, there are these drug test kits that is very available and actually cheap these days, where you can just randomly call your child, look, oh yeah, give me your urine there. He brings you urine and you test it right in front of them and you look at it. There are panels that test as much as 10 or 12 different substances, the common one that's available. So if a child knows that, look, my dad or mom can call me at any point in time and test my urine for substance use, there's that tendency that it might, serve as a deterrent from picking up those behavior. So those are the kind of things, checks that I think if we all put in place might prevent the young ones from picking up that behavior. And of course, we should not shy away from letting them understand the damaging effects which drug use can cause on their education or their occupation or family life, as the case may be.
Now, doctor, two things. You mentioned the issue of what we watch.
Yes.
I want to ask, what we watch,
yes,
can we stop ourselves from watching?
Okay.
Or like even some movies that show some behaviors,
yes,
even if the behavior is portrayed as negative,
yes,
is it that we should not watch it, or we can watch it and tell them that, you see, what that guy is doing is a bad behavior, or we should even say, no, you don't even watch, you don't watch this, don't watch that, don't watch, in fact, off the TV?
Okay. You see, now it depends on the level of engagement of the parent, and because some parents are just okay to watch and that's it. But then if you are watching with a high level of alertness, there's no harm in, because it's a form of education to such programs. You cannot exactly bar them. If they don't watch it in the house, they may watch it in a friend's place. So better let them watch it in a controlled environment where you are there to say, look, you see that, this is what it leads to. You see this, don't ever do this. And of course, you can now bring in maybe the aspects of the Sunnah and the Quran that talks against such behavior. That will help them to cement, because now they have learned. They are not curious to go and learn or find out about that behavior outside. They've seen it, they've seen the negative effects, and they've been tutored on what to do and what not. It's like a live expose for them, So like completely denying them from getting this exposure may actually be a risk in itself, because it has what we call a rebound phenomenon. For example, when a child gets to the university with a new level of independence, that, oh, this is what I've been missing, this is what I've been prevented for, there is that tendency to go in headlong. But by the time he has seen all of that all along and known and understood that, no, not all that glitters is gold, this one may look interesting, but I don't go there, this is a no-go area, because my dad has told me that, my uncle has told me that. He sees it, it doesn't interest him anymore.
He can control himself.
Exactly, because he's fully aware that, look, this is not, it's just...
It doesn't work. I already know, I've heard about it. So we want to get into, as an ummah now, find the parents can try to do this. Yes. The uncle, you also expanded it to, my uncle has said, my parent have said. Yes. Let's look at the ummah as a whole.
Yes.
What roles are we supposed to be doing, be delivering as a community, as a whole ummah thing? Yeah. Where should be our focal point on this issue?
Okay, you see, interestingly, when growing up, in those days, we used to attend what we call Islamia then. Now in the West, there is Ileke, we go here. So I think that area of socialization is still very important in making sure our kids go to such Islamic schools where they learn about Islamic tenets. They shouldn't just stop at learning how to read and write Arabic. Contemporary issues should also be taught to them there, okay? So that they can, because the world is changing, okay? You should be able to adapt to what is happening and also give information that is relevant in our time. The message of Islam is one and it's constant, but it is relevant to the changing times as the society evolves. So now, maybe going to schools, enlightenment, campaigns, forming clubs, drug-free clubs, go to schools, gather kids together, explain to them, because like I mentioned earlier, the issue of early education is actually very key. And if we as an Ummah can make it a responsibility that we always go to these children when they are still young and impressionable, and then give them this information and let them, this is good, this is bad, this is what you have to gain. As they grow and move to secondary school, we still go and give them information relevant to their stage of development. I think it will go a long way. It would not still stop those that we err. No. I mean, we are human. But then you have a high chance of minimizing those, because the information will still sink in to quite a number of them. I think the way to go is to prevent it as the child is growing up with the message.
Jazakallah khair. I mean, a lot has been said, and when they say it's not about quantity of what we say, but what we say, how far can we take the little that we have said. Alhamdulillah, this is where we'll be wrapping up today's session. A lot has been said by Dr. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for coming to talk with us. That will be it for this week. We'll be here again next week with a new topic and new issues that the Ummah needs to look at collectively. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu.